Hi everyone, I'm Chris and I'd like to thank you for joining us on the Amplify Your Brand live stream, the ultimate live on building a powerful brand in today's digital landscape. Along with my friend and fellow colleague there and branding expert Simao, we are here to share expertise and help you take your brand to the next level. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner, a marketing professional, or someone who's tinkering around with the personal brand in the new year, then this is the live stream packed with practical insights and strategies that will help you amplify your brand and stand out in the digital landscape. So let's get ready, take some notes, take what we talk about today, put it into action, because by the end of this live stream, you have a clear roadmap of what it takes to truly resonate with your target audience. So thanks again for joining us today, and let's find another way to amplify your brand. And we're going to talk about the topic, Sim, today of writing a clear and inspiring brand vision statement. Now, it's going to be a practical guide on how to do it. It's not going to be like a full-on course or anything like that. We're just going to
detailed workshop.
Exactly. We're going to talk about the main aspects of what makes this work for you and why it's important. And the good news about today is if anybody missed last week's episode, it's building on what we talked about last week. So hopefully if you go back and look at last week's, you get inspired for why you're doing what you're doing and why you're getting out of bed. This is how we document it so that you can then get others to follow that vision that you've got. And it also helps you like put that vision out there so that you've got that shining North Star and you can head towards it. And rather than go into all the details about what a vision statement is, I'll follow our script and we'll get there. But Sim, I will give you a chance just to say what your thoughts are on today's topic.
Yes, we've covered the purpose, the why. This is the crystallization of that why, and like Chris mentioned, a North Star that will help guide decisions on a daily basis, both internally and to stakeholders and externally, because the brand vision statement is the one thing that encapsulates sort of the business plan with the future of making that business plan come to execution.
Yeah, and I think something you just mentioned there is quite poignant to this session that people need to understand is that it's not about the externals. This is something that's internal that gets turned into externals, but it's really got to be brought in by internal and all your stakeholders across whatever your brand touches. Everybody has to buy into this. Otherwise, this brand does not work without the vision statement working. So yeah, that's how crucial this document is. So let's get into presenting what we're talking about today. So just to touch on why we do what we do today, it is about obviously applying what we do with the P8 branding program, which we spent 20 years over developing and upgrading for the Brandy-on Identity framework. It encompasses 8 critical sections of the brand, which we call the 8 Ps. It's an easy to understand implemented program, so you can build as a business owner and amplify your brand on these 8 Ps. And today we've got Sim doing the Michelangelo finger pointing to purpose, which is what today is all about. Last week was about purpose, and so is today. So Sim's there pointing away again, telling us that in a fast-paced competitive landscape of the business world, a well-crafted vision statement is not just a mere formality. It's what helps you stand out and is the bedrock of the brand's identity and future success. It serves as a guiding force, providing strategic roadmaps, aligning the internal teams. Actually, I'll bring us up on the screen there. Providing a strategic roadmap, aligning internal teams and captivating a commitment of those stakeholders. A vision statement is more than words on paper. It's a powerful tool that amplifies your brand's purpose, differentiates it from the competition, and sets the stage for a compelling narrative that resonates with both internal teams and the external audiences. So essentially summarizing what we just talked about at the very opening there, Sim. I just want to touch on these 3 points. So the importance of a vision statement is, one, it guides any future strategic directions. It inspires and aligns your current and future teams. And 3, motivates stakeholders for long-term commitment. So 3 outtakes that should make sense to you if you are a business owner. Getting those right helps the business. Yeah. So let's talk about what actually a vision statement is. So it's a vision statement is a concise and aspirational declaration that outlines a long-term goal and the overarching purpose of the brand. It serves as a beacon for the organization, providing direction and inspiration, as I said, for internal and employees and external stakeholders, and includes customers and partners. So as I said, every touch point along the way your brand goes, this vision statement goes beyond just a short-term objective and focuses on the broader impact of the contribution to the brand and aspires to make in the world. It's a pretty powerful thing, and we are going to look at some examples later to illustrate this. And when you see the brands, you'll understand that they're the ones doing it really, really well.
Yes.
Let's go further with what is a vision statement. It captures the brand's core values, beliefs, and desires and positions it in the future, painting a vivid picture of what success looks like. So a well-crafted vision statement should be clear, memorable, and capable of motivating individuals to rally around the brand's purpose and vision. Hence, last week, we talked about the importance of knowing why you do what you do and why your purpose is what it is. This is where we can now turn that into an aspirational vision. And we're going to get straight into some examples here. So Tesla could just say, we make electric cars. But not further than that by saying they want to be compelling. And compelling is a pretty powerful word. They've made it specific to being a car company in the 21st century, and they're driving the transition. And this is the key here, transition to electric cars. So they know that they're not just going to make people buy cars. They're going to have to help them be understanding why this is the right direction and the thing to be doing. So they're guiding people to take electric cars on as an option rather than petrol guzzling cars. Otherwise, that would say petrol guzzling vehicles. It says electric cars. So, this gets to the point of, if you want to work with Tesla, you know why you're working with them, because you're going to build some futuristic cars, and you're not just building the car, you're changing an industry. That's what this is clearly trying to resonate. Yep. Tim?
Grow from the category it belongs to, and clearly Tesla is a very good example of that, and we have some others that state that quite well.
Yeah.
Google.
So everybody uses Google, and the one thing we all remember is when you see this, you say, provide access to the world's information in one click. We all know that we're going to go click. So this is a visual one. You can hear it and you can visualize it when you hear that and you read that and you go, the world's information. Like, it's a pretty bold statement. And as you've seen over the last 2 decades or so since they've started this process, that's exactly what Google has been doing. And now they've had to go even further by creating Alphabet above Google, so that they can expand into beyond just the search engine and the one click. But the one click is the clear thing here that just really highlights the fact that everybody wants to find what they want in one click if they can, and that's what this does. So I think it's a great example. Another one is Amazon is to be the Earth's most customer-centric customer, where customers can find and discover anything they want to buy online. So again, this one is being very specific about the fact if you're online and you want to buy something, then we're the place to do it. And they're being very, very clear about the Earth and customer-centric based on where they're taking their business with space. They'll have to call it Mars and universe sometime in the future. But for now, they're dealing with what they know, and that's Earth. So again, it's being, if you went to work for Amazon, you know that you have to think about the customer and you have to think about what they're after and discovering. And you know that basically if something's not being bought online, then Amazon's going to go find it and put it online and make it purchasable, because that's what they're all about. So it's a very, very clear example of a vision. And this is probably one of my favorite ones of Nike. It's to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete. And they've got this little asterisk on it, in the world. And then it's like, if you have a body, you are an athlete. So this one basically resonates with everyone and tells you this is what you need to do. And we are the guys that have the apparel, the wear, the whatever it is to get there. And so I think, like, basically this one inspires anybody who wants to work for Nike to know that they're there to help anybody be the best athlete that they want to be. And they've done it with a bit of humor in the way that they go about it. So, the key that you're going to take away from today is clarity and inspiration. And we're going to get into those things right now. So here's some characteristics of a clear and inspiring brand vision. It has clarity, it's inspirational, and it's future orientated. So every single one of those examples we talked about were clear about what they were trying to do. They were inspirational in the way they presented it, and they were all talking about something in the future that people want to achieve or do, whether it's finding all the information in one click, whether it's buying anything you want online, or it's the fact that you want to get a car that's going to be future orientated with it being electric. There's just things that we talked about there. So let's talk about the characteristics of clarity. So, Sim, why is it important to ensure the vision is straightforward and easy to understand?
Well, this is the part that makes the engagement and the buy-in from the internal stakeholders. If you don't know what it is, if it takes too much explaining, it's gone beyond the scope of what a very good brand vision statement is about. Because anybody should be able to understand quite immediately what the perfect world, and I say perfect world because it ties into vision. And again, in our past episodes, we've talked about vision. The vision is what the perfect world looks like if your brand delivers on its promises day in and day out. The brand vision statement encapsulates that with clarity and crystallizes it into a very easy to apprehend, even if the product or service is a little bit advanced or is loaded with technology. Again, Tesla, Google, these are tech companies. You don't need to know programming to understand what they do. Google says it. They deliver information to you at the speed of a click. Tesla, transitioning the world into vehicles that run on electricity. That's simple enough. Clarity is about making something futuristic that might not be known in the marketplace, present tense based, and understood by everybody who reads it. And this starts inside out. This is what building a brand is about. And just to bring it to the purpose of our entire podcast and to business owners who might sometimes question what building brands is about. These are the little niggles of what go into creating a business. Otherwise, you become a transaction thought and not an emotional or a connection made to the customer's perception. Clarity is crucial in all of that.
That's right. Yeah. And when it comes to clarity, I think if you can take it to like a standard grade 3, grade 4, like to 8 to 10-year-old, and say your vision statement and they get it, or they can recite something back to you, then I think you've nailed it. That's a really simple test.
Yes.
Yeah. So here we go for the second characteristic of all of this. It's being inspirational. So if you can convey a sense of purpose and motivation for both internal and external stakeholders, then your vision statement is doing its job. And what we mean by that is the people buying or being serviced by your product get it, and the people who are delivering it as either staff members or you are delivering the same thing. And so both of you are getting each other. It's that kind of unison type scenario where you're living, what do you call it, synchronicity? You're living in life together. So
unspoken truth that aligns both the production and the reception of the delivery, and that's what inspiration in this brand vision statement context refers to.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we come back to those examples we started off the session with. They all go about that by understanding who the end user is and what the internal side of it has to do to deliver it. And then this is the key to all of this, because otherwise, if you don't have it future orientated to reflect a forward thinking perspective that outlines the brand's long-term goals, you're basically going to be a couch potato and saying, I've achieved it, I've done it, it's all good. Like, you really want to have something you can keep sort of almost touching, but you don't quite get there. That's the ultimate goal of the vision statement.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And if you do achieve it, you've clearly not put a high enough goal on trying to achieve that, because that's what a vision statement is really all about. So let's get into some other parts of crafting a clear and inspirational brand vision. So I've put 4 points here that we should work through. One is to define what that purpose is. Then we understand knowing your values, envisioning that future, and being concise and specific. So we're kind of reverse engineering a few of those points with what we just talked about. So let's get into the first step here, which is defining your purpose. So we've got a whole episode around this, so we're not going to go, spend the entire session around this. But look, get into identifying your core purpose and the mission of your brand, and consider the impact your brand aims to make to the world. Is a really simple way to go about this. We talked about this last week, what is your why? Why do you get out of bed? All those kind of things. But I think you need to think about those key points we put here is like, what is the impact the brand aims to make to the world? So if you can clearly state that, then your vision statement is going to do all the 3 steps we talked about earlier about being, clear, inspirational, and future orientated. This one is the one we've talked about a little bit in other episodes as well. And we really want you to understand that, like, knowing your values, identifying those core values that define your brand, and then aligning these values with the overall mission and purpose really do bring it all together. And we've touched on this. If you don't know these, then what happens is you end up with kind of you wake up every day with a bit of a schizophrenic personality. You're not sure why you're doing what you're doing. And you kind of choose which flavor of the month feels great for you and you go with it. What happens is you lose audiences, you win audiences, but you ultimately it's gonna lose people, because people do like a bit of consistency. They like to kind of know what they're getting, and they want to know that it's going to be that kind of experience every time. If it's a negative one, it's not going to hang around for long. If it's a positive one, you continue to deliver on it, you're going to have people coming back in droves, and they're going to tell others about it. And that's why, and we've talked about this in another episode, where there's certain companies that just went woke because everyone else is going woke. And it's like, if your brand is not a woke brand, if it's a brand that's edgy and pushes the envelope and is loud,
and
or
questions beliefs and
all that stuff,
disrupts the status quo.
Exactly, right? And even worse, with the Bud Light example we've talked about in the past, like, if your audience is nowhere near a woke audience, like, that's just not their thing. Like, and you go there, like, instantly you're going to lose them, which is what happened with the Bud Light scenario, which we don't need to go into this episode because we've touched on that many times. Now, the third step in obviously crafting a clear and inspirational brand vision is picture what success looks like for your brand in the long term, and think about the positive changes you want to bring to the customers and the world. So to me, it's the favorite part of developing a vision statement, because it's the pipe dream. It's the, like, you know why you're doing what you're doing, and then you go, well, I'm doing this because I want this to happen. I want this outcome for my audience and the world. Like, this is it. This is the thing. And then if you can envisage that and put that into some brief words that people can grab hold of, so that they can get up in the morning and go in 3 or 5 words, that's why I'm doing this, then you're going to hit the mark with that. And like I touched on earlier, you don't become a couch potato and just sit down and go, well, I've delivered it, I've done it. You're kind of getting out of bed every morning going, I'm nearly there, I'm not there, I've got so much more work to do, whichever way you are, but you're still thinking about the next step you've got to take to get to that future and what it looks like. And if you don't give people a visual, like, thing to grab hold of, they themselves struggle to see what you see. And so it's really an important part of the process is to, what you want and what your vision looks like, and then you communicate it clearly to others so that they can see that future direction and make it possible and plausible. So even if it is an impossible one, you need to still show steps you're going to take to try and get there. And if those steps seem plausible, they will believe in those steps. And that's something you need to be important in that process of deciding how you're going to get there. And then that's where this comes from. The fourth step in crafting a clear and inspirational brand vision is to be concise and specific. So keep the vision statement concise by capturing the essence of your brand's aspirations. Avoid jargon and industry-specific language that may be unclear to the broader audience. You touched on this with the tech companies earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah. Google doesn't say to the world, by way of a very complex algorithmic equation, we are able to scrap data from the existing sources of the internet. No, that's already too long. That's already too complicated. Again, go back to the 8-year-old and explain. With one click, you have information. Simple as that.
And and it's the same with electric cars. I'm sure if and Elon Musk, he does waffle a little bit when he gets into presentations and things. But the fact is, it's generally because he's in a technical conversation, someone's asking him technical things. But when it comes to the vision statement, he's very, very clear on what he's trying to do. You'll see him instantly in interviews I've watched where when you ask him what Tesla is about, he gets very specific. When it comes to the technology, he will go into detail because, like, you've asked him about what he's doing and things like that, and he'll go into it. So, but jargon, as I said earlier, if you use jargon and industry-specific stuff, and then you go to that grade 3 or 4-year-old and say, blah, 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 you lose them. But if you say, you go to, your iPad or your browser and you just type in "find me a pony," they get it, right?
Click.
But yeah, click and search for the pony. You know, they'll get it. But if you try to explain what's going on behind the scenes, like I won't even try to remember everything you said, Sim, but you did a good example of what it's about. You're not going to get there. So they're the steps to crafting a clear and inspirational brand. Be, concise. Go through again, define your purpose, know your values, envision the future, and then be concise and specific about where you're taking your brand. Let's look at some common mistakes people do, and they're pretty much going to reinforce everything we've talked about today in opposite. So, crafting a brand vision statement can be a challenge, and there are common pitfalls that organizations should be cautious of to ensure effectiveness of their vision statement. We've just talked about this, lack of clarity. So if you don't understand what you're doing, you're going to lose people. And then you don't want to use generic and uninspiring language. And I'll go back to the Tesla one. He used the word compelling. It's a word that just instantly generates something in you when you hear that word. And so you've got to think about that kind of wording that you can use in yours to get that vision going on. And then just because we said, use generic and uninspiring language and you go off and create some amazing language, don't get too complex with it. So, don't get over creative with those words, because then you may make it complex and people may not understand it and not get where they're going. Number 4 on this list is obviously not being future orientated. We've touched on that many times in this. Know why you're doing what you're doing and where you're going. Give someone a bright future to look for. Lack of specificity is something that people are really, really not clear on when they do this. They think by, how do I say this? People have it in their head, and they in their head it seems really clear, but if you can't get it out in words and you can't write it up on a wall in, as I said, between 7 to maybe 15 words or less, you really aren't being specific enough. So write it, rewrite it, and write it again. We'll get down to that in another slide that we're talking about later on. This is probably the key one here. Simon, you've had this experience. We've talked about this many times in companies that you've worked for. If you fail to involve the stakeholders, and when we talk about stakeholders, it's not about big boardroom meetings where there's 6 or 7 people in a board making the decisions. It's not those guys. No, we're talking about everybody that touches your brand, right down to the customer that buys, to the internal team member who's delivering on the brand promise, whatever that is. Okay, so you've got to be considerate of when you write your vision statement, is it broad enough and specific enough? So is it making sure it's involving everybody, but giving them all one purpose to be together in the same room and push forward on that same goal? That's the thing here. Ignoring core values is a really, really crucial one that a lot of people make mistakes on. They, like I said earlier, they follow a trend. So they use some words and they go with certain values and go everyone's, into the environment. But if you're a logging company and you're just cutting down trees every day, like, you've got to be a little bit more careful about how you go about that approach, because, if everyone's hating trees being cut down and that's what your business is, you're going to struggle to get the core values right. So you've got to make sure if you're doing that kind of thing, the value of regeneration, sustainability, all those other things start to come into it. But you've actually then got to deliver on those things. You can't just say you think they're good ideas and not be delivering on them. So think about your core values. Not reflecting on change and adaptability. A lot of people start a business because they've either lost their job or they've got a great idea, but then they really don't look at the idea and go, is it something that's just a bit of a fly by the month thing that's going to be around for today, but maybe by the end of the year, everyone's forgotten about that and they're moving on to the next trend. So be careful about what you do is not reflecting the change and adaptability of the future proofing it. So we will get into this in a future slide about this, but be careful that what you're doing has a longer term goal and isn't going to be something that just fly by the night. And then finally, being overly long, as I touched on, it should be something that's between 7 and 15 words, so that you can get it quickly across. And in many cases, we encourage our clients, if they can, put this on a wall somewhere in their building, so that it's being seen and thought of every day. And the final thing, and it seems pretty clear, but neglecting customer focus. So, like, it's no use saying like we are going to have the best team in the world, and then that team, it doesn't matter because the team that they're working with is in the customer. The customer's having a terrible experience. So your team's happy, they're super pumped and doing things, and they're loving work and they're loving ripping off the customer, but the customer's experience is terrible. You don't want that. So make sure that the customer, when they see your vision statement, see themselves in it. They can see that, hang on, that's going to make a better world. That better world involves me. I'm happy to be part of this business and where it's going. I'm going to do business with them. I'm going to enjoy their service, their product, whatever the case be. Anything you want to touch on with those common mistakes that I've worked through?
Well, maybe going back to the values, because the values are really tied into both involvement of stakeholders internally, and then going with the wind, trying to be woke for the sake of it's what's happening currently, going and chasing trends. You either stand for something or you fall for nothing, and that's definitely what happened with Bud Light. Big as they are, they took a huge hit, huge backlash, because they didn't stick to their core values. And it's not that they don't know what those core values are, because they've definitely built an audience over many, many years. And they tried to get away with a move that was completely against their core values. And this is a big lesson. I think it's a really good, interesting lesson for people who trying to understand how brands work, because it ties into as well the customer. The customer has spoke, and the customer felt neglected. This one really jumps all over the common mistakes to avoid. This table that we have here, Bud Light just crossed off 4 or 5 of these.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Amazon is a really good example of how, as polarizing as they can be as a company, they mentioned that they focus on the customer, and despite being absolutely riddled with genius work in the tech space, they are making it all so easy for a customer to sit at a computer, select a product, order it, and then get other suggestions, and possible cross sales and upsells and all of this stuff.
Yep.
But as complex as their website is, it looks incredibly simple to understand and navigate from the customer perspective. This is something that they do really, really well. And
right.
it's all of these things. They are easy to overlook, and the bigger a brand gets, the more contradictions will show up asking questions. But you said this before, what about this now? The values sit at the core of everything. The execution into the future and making it customer friendly is where it all really ties in.
I agree. Yeah. So we're going to move on to, we've got mistakes, but we're going to go back to what we touched on earlier about engaging stakeholders in the vision. So involving stakeholders in the development of brand vision is crucial for various reasons. So here are those examples. So you have touched on many times in previous episodes, as an employee, when you were part of a business and they engaged you and they made you feel like you were part of that big vision that they were trying to implement, you bought into it, and it makes, you do a better job. You feel like you're doing something with impact within the business and for the consumers that were buying from you with the work you were doing, right? So you just felt good about it. So make sure the employees feel like what they're doing matters, and it's their vision of the business is taking on. You've just touched on a whole thing around alignment with the organizational values, so we won't revisit that, but obviously values are super important in aligning with where you go. Customer-centric approach, you've just talked about how with Amazon, how they've gone about that, so we'll move on to that one. Enhanced innovation. So you need to make people feel like what you're doing is innovative and different. And we've talked about this, where different feels like new feels like it's something I should get involved with. So you don't want it to be new, alienating, scary stuff. You just want to be something that's buying into the innovation and then delivering on what you're doing. So don't just do it like everybody else is doing it. Look at ways you can do it differently, but make it a good experience when you do it. Don't make it overcomplicated, so that you can get the increased stakeholder buy-in, because the more they buy into where you're taking your business or the brand, the more likely they're going to go out there and tell others about it and reinforce what you're trying to do. Now, this is an important one here. Try to get them to foster trust and transparency in this. So I think what we were touching on earlier with other things is it's no use going out there and saying something and then just doing something totally different. Like, you need to foster that trust by showing up, and we've talked about this all last year, consistently. Do it as a certain way, in a certain flavor, and just stick with it. Don't keep changing each week, each month, whatever the case be. Make sure you're following a certain brand guidelines that we've talked about in the past, that you need to make sure they're implemented in a certain way. Everything we do in the presentations that you've seen is using similar fonts, similar colors, similar icon styles. There's all sorts of things we do very consistently. We don't do it perfectly. There's always exceptions to the rules, but the fact is you're doing it more often the right way than the wrong way. And that's the key to this whole process. And being transparent. Like, again, it comes down to those values we talk about, but you need to be as transparent about where you're taking your brand with whoever your stakeholders are, so that they're into where you're going. We've seen many, many examples over the years where a brand has done one thing and eventually it's come out of the woodworks that they were doing something that wasn't quite in line with those values. And if they're a big business, stock market plummets. If they're an up and coming business, they basically go out of business very quickly. Even though they look like a very promising business, they went out. And we were talking about the Juul last year as the vaporware. They were a great example of that, where they sold the vision of what they were trying to do, but then internally and their marketing was not doing that. And then they
started falling apart from the inside out. Absolutely.
Inside out. Yeah, exactly. And they ended up being bought out by their
very own enemy.
Yeah, exactly. Because they just didn't go about it the right way. And then the final thing here is improving communication. So you've got to be consistently communicating with your stakeholders what you're trying to do with the brand and where it's going, so that everybody is buying into it. How often you do that and how you do that is going to depend on the type of business you are, the industry you're working in, and all sorts of other factors. But you just need to make sure you're improving that communication style and getting that feedback. And I'm going to talk about that in the next slide, where we may as well lead into that, which is, unless you had something else you want to touch on.
That's it.
Cool. So everything I just touched on then, we want to review and refine it. So the biggest mistake a lot of people make with their vision statement, and hence why we're starting off 2024 this year by talking about this, is because you need to craft your brand vision in an ongoing journey, not just a one-time task. So it's a dynamic nature of a vision. It allows it to evolve as the organization grows and adapts. There is a need for regular reviews to ensure the brand vision remains relevant, and it aligns with the evolving organizational goals, values, and market dynamics. So if 2023 was a good year for you and you came into 2024 and there's a whole bunch of new challenges, it's because each year and things change. It doesn't mean just because the calendar rolled over that things change. It's just how life works. Things evolve and dynamics happen and worldly events happen, and there's just so much going on. But so you need to look at what your vision was last year and just make sure right now that you are looking at this year, and is it aligning with everything you were doing last year that's going to keep flowing this year. Doesn't mean you're going to get it perfect and you're going to get it right. But you just need to make sure that you're just not going down the same old pathway that you were last year. And maybe there's things that last year would have, got part by, but this year there's been some new challenges. So you have to maybe change those.
Yeah, and strategically be able to either predict or know that they're coming. The worst that happens to businesses is denying something is coming, or not being very actively keeping the pulse on the market. Kodak had a moment like this years and years ago. They didn't want to see the rhino. They heard the stomping. Everybody was saying there's a rhino coming. They looked the other way. We'll be fine. and they got smashed by the rhino.
Yeah.
The rhino here being the metaphor for digital photography. So even though
Which
this
they
example
invented.
is quite, sorry?
Which they invented.
Oh, there you go. Yes, yes. And that's the satire of the whole thing, the ironic part of it all. Anyway,
Yeah. But it's the same
revisit.
Blockbuster. So
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And Blockbuster were given the chance to get in at ground level on the new era that was to come. There was I cannot remember the gentleman's name. He worked hard to get into a meeting room and propose associating with Blockbuster into the digital age. And Blockbuster said, "We have the monopoly. Why would you even give you the attention of today and give you a slice of our market? You go and try and build your digital whatever films online. We'll be
yeah,
just fine." And fine they were not. Fine they were not. So
exactly.
all of these examples are just the revisiting of what reviewing and refining means. Be aware that keeping the finger on the space that you exist is done on a consistent basis, future proof, and know what is coming.
That's right. Yeah. And look, you can't always predict the future perfectly, but you can kind of maybe get the dint out of, or the divot may, instead of being a massive one, could be just a little dint. Like there's things that you can do to hopefully make the impact not as impactful on your business and your bottom line if you can just sort of ride the wave. So
You absolutely
yeah,
riding the wave was the expression that I was going to complement your statement right there. AI right now is either disrupting and wiping out, or being able to provide a riding the wave moment, and we are no different. AI has absolutely impacted our space very much so, but
yeah,
we are doing the quickest and the best that we can to ride that wave and adopt it, so as to including it in what we do ourselves.
that's right. So, look, guys, in summary, hopefully you've taken away the fact that, this vision statement guides any future strategic decisions that you make, and it inspires and aligns your current and future teams. And finally, the key to this is it motivates stakeholders for long-term commitment so that whatever goals you're aiming for, they go for. So, we always have a coffee cup moment, and in summary, a clear and inspiring brand vision serves as the compass for the organization's success. It aligns the teams, it attracts customers, and distinguishes the brand and its competitive landscape. So, by involving stakeholders and fostering adaptability through either iterative refinement, like we've just talked about, and ensuring periodic reviews, a brand not only stays relevant but sustains its impact, contributing a long-term success and resilience across a bunch of boards. Anything else you want to touch on with this coffee cup moment that we've just highlighted here, Sim?
Enjoy the heat of the coffee. It's Australia Day, and wishing everybody the happiest possible day.
For sure. So, look, guys, if you like what we talked about and you're still not sure what to go about with your vision statement, please book a discovery session. Let us better understand your business and assess the state of your brand, your goals, and where your brand needs to be. Go to brandyon.agency and inquire, or follow the link there with brand guardianship after it, and book us in. We'd love to have a chat to you. How does it work? Well, look, as brand guardians, we are making it as simple as a 1, 2, 3 approach. We look at the discovery call where we sit down and work out those goals and things that work with your business. And then we look at a program that, we understand one size doesn't fit all. So we determine which program works for your goals and put the plan in place. Once we've got that in place, we're looking at onboarding and coaching you, where we look at regularly assigning a brand guardian as Sim and myself, and we stay focused on amplifying your brand by meeting regularly with you. So it's a really simple process. Book it in. We'd love to have a discovery session with you and understand how your brand needs to be to amplify it as best we can. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. It's been an enlightening session around vision statements, something that is overlooked a little bit by people, but if you do get it right, it really works for your business, because it's just like a cornerstone item that if you know why you're doing what you're doing and where you're going and what that vision looks like, and everyone else can buy into it, life just starts to become a little bit easier. All right.
From everybody here at Brand, enjoy the rest of your day, and let us know where you're watching this from. Type in the comments your country and which platform you're on. Looking forward to the next week.
Yep. See everyone. Look forward to amplifying your brand next week. Take care. Bye.